delay. So stop your waiting.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Fox 12 Weather Podcast. Today is Friday, June 28th. I'm meteorologist Jeff Orgeron, joined by Camila Ortiz. Hey Camila.
Good morning, Jeff.
Yeah, Mark Nelson is on vacation. I don't know where he is. He might be at home doing a staycation. He may be camping somewhere.
That's true. Yeah.
He doesn't really share with us often, so that's fine. And then Katie is taking a weekend, which is good for her.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen you in a little bit.
I know. I feel like I've been personally kind of slacking with the podcast games, so this was good to.
You know what?
Come on
You
back.
have an excuse. From a new father, a new parent to a future parent. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's crazy. I think I'm at the point in my pregnancy, so I'm like about to be 27 weeks.
Okay.
So, but it's that point where, and you know, maybe your wife experienced this as well, where like, I swear you look down every day and you're like, it got bigger, like day by day. You know what I mean? Like you wake up and you're like, it's bigger.
Yeah.
So baby
totally.
bump is just like exploding, but it's good. That's a good thing.
I think Katie described it, my Katie, described the phase you're in or the time period you're in as like the honeymoon phase of pregnancy where of course you're getting bigger and that's becoming more challenging, but you're past the point of like the morning sickness or the weird feelings. I don't know. Everybody has a different story. I'm a guy.
For everyone. Yeah. And you know what? I've never had any sickness, no nausea ever this entire time. But I'm definitely at the point where like, so full disclosure, I did like a track meet. I ran like a mile like last week. It was great fun, a community track meet, no pressure, but of course, like I can't like turn off that like competitive thing. So I'm like, I think I can still run like 6-minute pace. The next day, Jeff, my body was like, we can't do that anymore. Please don't. Because it just, the weight, the pressure, like things start to feel really weird. So,
I bet. You know, I asked you like if you were planning to still train. You said your doctor said you were going to just listen to your body and see how things go. And you're doing that. It sounds like.
That's right. That was the first cue that I was like, okay, no more 6-minute miles. Got it. Understood. Cool.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty intense for anybody, even if they're not pregnant. So good for you that you're still, going for it. But and I'm glad to hear you're doing well. And it's good to see your face. Yeah,
likewise. How is sweet Ellie doing?
Ellie's great. She's almost 7 months old. A couple days from now.
That's crazy.
We recently took her for her first time to the Oregon Zoo. But you'll note this when you become a mom that early on their window of staying awake is pretty short. So 2.5 hours. So it was a short visit to the zoo. We had to head back home to get a nap in. So
still, that's so fun though. Like you're going and taking her and doing things. That's great.
It's honestly every day is getting more and more fun. Her personality is growing. So can't wait for you to experience it yourself. So cool. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in this podcast. Of course, if you're joining us, just the audio version, we always encourage you to join the video version as well. You can find that on our website. It airs on Fox 12 now every Friday at 2:00. It's on YouTube once we finish this up and it gets posted. We encourage you to watch the video version because we show awesome graphics, animations, and it's better to visualize what's going on with the forecast and the weather. So,
and you get to see our beautiful faces, don't you?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about June. Of course, we're in the final few days of June. We'll talk about some of the numbers, how things have been faring. We have a look back at what happened a few years ago. I know many of you remember what happened a few years ago in June. I won't dive into it just yet. The forecast, well, it looks pretty steady up until mid to late week of next week. And then things look like they're going to be turning up temperature-wise. And then we're also going to be doing a little tropical update. I know the tropics don't necessarily impact us, but people are taking vacations. We have family and friends along maybe the Gulf Coast or East Coast. So I think it's important to cover what's going on in the tropics. And then we'll show some awesome viewer photos, which we appreciate you sending in to our website or our weather app. So let me hop over to the PowerPoint here, switch it over, and let's talk about the month of June so far. I'm showing some data for Portland, but also for Astoria. Camila, it's been a pretty normal month so far, month of June.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, pretty uneventful. And honestly, I think it's kind of nice that we've had a little bit of a roller coaster vibe. We haven't had long stretches of either too warm or too cold. So
progressive pattern. We've gotten some warm days, some hot days, some cool days, some rainy days. I mean, the rainiest day, I've kind of highlighted some of these days. June 2nd was the wettest day this month. and probably will end up being the wettest day in Portland. We picked up about 7/10 of an inch of rain, so under an inch. Rainfall for the month has been near normal. I mean, we usually pick up about 1.5 inches. We've seen about 1.33 inches of rain. Temperature wise, it's been fairly normal, I guess slightly above normal. A typical June, our average between the highs and lows is 64 degrees. We're averaging between highs and lows about 65.5 degrees. So, I mean, it's been a little bit warmer than normal, but we haven't had anything too extreme. The hottest days were back on June 20th and June 21st. We ended up in the low 90s. We did hit 89 this past Tuesday.
Yeah.
But I think some people are kind of craving a little bit of heat,
Yeah. I think so. It's that time of the year, we're still kind of transitioning into summer, but I think people are kind of itching for the sunny, warm afternoons, but they're coming. So I think it's been nice to get this variety personally.
Yeah. From the Good Day Oregon standpoint, I'm speaking for Kimberly Moss. I'm speaking for Joe V. I'm speaking for Bonnie. I personally like the 60s and 70s myself.
Yeah.
I bet you do too for training purposes.
I really do. Yeah. And also just for being pregnant in general. Can it please not be too hot? Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's switch over to Astoria's numbers. And frankly, they've had a fairly normal month as well. Temperature wise, they're right on point with where they should be. A lot of days in the 60s, a few days in the 70s, nighttime lows in the 40s and 50s for the most part. Rainfall, they've actually experienced a wetter than normal month. Even with a few days left, over 3 inches of rain. Typically, they pick up about 2 to 2.5 inches of rain in Astoria in the month of June. It's not the wettest month, of course. But I mean, west of the Cascades, considering we haven't had a very hot month, Camilla, we haven't had a very dry month. The vegetation is still fairly moist. We don't have any super high fire danger. Of course, we do have some fires that broke out in central and eastern Oregon. The Darlene 3 fire, for instance, near Prineville. But west of the Cascades, with the the lack of heat and the fact that it hasn't been a super dry month, we haven't faced super high fire danger, which is great.
Yeah, that is great. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and keep the party going here. Camilla, you brought this up last night. We were talking about what are we going to go over in this podcast? No Mark, no Katie. It's all to us.
And when the weather has been kind of a snooze fest, right? To be honest.
Right.
But this was a very interesting time for us 3 years ago, back in 2021. Right. Oh my gosh, Jeff, this heat wave was gnarly.
It was bad. I mean, let's be frank. It was super anomalous. I mean, it was just this super strong high pressure system that built over the western United States, a heat dome, as many described it, and it brought us by far our hottest weather that we've seen on record.
Yeah, and I think I was looking at the numbers yesterday. I think it started with a day in the 90s, and then we had these 3 really bad days, well into the hundreds for 3 consecutive days. And then I think we finished things up with another day in the 90s. But
nailed it. Yep.
Yeah. Honing in here. I mean, the 26th, 27th, and 28th of 2021, just crazy hot temperatures for Portland. So we went 108, 112, and then 116 on Monday the 28th, which 116 is the hottest temperature we've ever seen recorded at PDX, at least, dating back to when we started compiling numbers there. And then also worth mentioning the record warm lows, because each of those days we were breaking record warm lows as well. And then on that same Monday where we hit 116 in the afternoon, we bottomed out at 75. So that's the warmest, all-time warmest low we've seen at PDX.
Yeah, and a couple of notes there. The all-time record high previous to this was set back in 1981, 107. So we went 3 days in a row beating that. In fact, we smashed it on the 27th and 28th. And I think Mark mentioned this. I didn't actually check the record, but I think we have a higher all-time record high than Tucson, Arizona does.
Wow. Wait, really?
I believe so. We'll have to double check that stat, but
I mean, these look like Arizona numbers to me. I mean, it's just a crazy thing to see here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and one of the reasons, down in Tucson, once they get into like July and August, they start to get the summer monsoon, the increased moisture, the thunderstorms during the afternoons, and they don't get as extreme of heat during that time of year. Yeah. So June is kind of their window. But another thing that was going on, of course, we just had the summer solstice. So these were just a few days after the summer solstice when we have the most intense sunlight and the longest days in terms of daylight hours. This was, several days after, but still intense sunlight combined with that strong high pressure aloft. The combination just, it sent those temperatures way up there. Yeah. So that was some remarkable stuff. I've got a couple more things to show you here. So this was June 2021, the stats at PDX, Camilla. We had 9 days at and above 90 degrees for our afternoon highs, 7 nights at and above 65 degrees. Oh. When you average the highs and lows together, our average temperature was over 70 degrees, just above 70 degrees.
Wow.
And that led us to the warmest June on record. Yeah. When you look at the June's top 10 right here, June 2021 basically beat out 2015. And then next in line was back in 1992. The average temperature was 67 degrees. So nothing to sneeze at. I think everybody will remember that. I think a lot of people will remember the cool down that happened the evening of June 28th. I remember I had this little weather station. It was a dinky little weather station. I've since upgraded on our deck. And that evening with that onshore push, my thermometer dropped 30 degrees in 2 hours.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was just a dramatic day, a dramatic series of days. So anyways, we're not dealing with that kind of heat right now. And I hope that we don't have that coming our way. That being said, Camilla, there is some toasty weather likely coming late next week.
Yeah,
around the 4th.
It looks like we got another ridge coming.
And the question is, how strong is that ridge going to get? Let's get into the conditions. This is visible satellite imagery from this morning. That slide that you can kind of see, or that, how it kind of goes from a different color from black and white to more color. Yeah. That's the sunrise. If you've never.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's the sunrise occurring here in the Pacific Northwest and over the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Can you see my cursor, Camilla?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So we hit 70 on Wednesday, 72 on Thursday. You can see the upper level low pressure system spinning over Montana in southern Canada on the top right-hand corner of the screen. So that's the weather system that brought us the cooler, kind of showery weather at times. That's departing to the east. So we're more or less in between weather systems. We have weak high pressure building that's helping to eliminate the cloud cover. So I would say it's mostly clear here in Oregon this morning, Friday morning, the 28th, and we have quite a bit of cloud cover over western Washington.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the upper level pattern.
Sweet.
So you can see northeast corner of the screen, or the top right corner of the screen, you can see that the upper level low where the cursor is. So we have weak high pressure building aloft. We don't have necessarily any super high temperatures coming. I think our temperatures are actually going to be fairly steady over the next 3 to 5 days. Yeah. We're probably going to top out near 80 degrees in Portland. I would say upper 70s and low 80s from Portland to Salem. Yeah. So this is the Friday late afternoon upper level pattern. You can see over the northeast Pacific Ocean, we do have a weak trough that'll be kind of inching closer. You can see that happening Saturday afternoon as well. Starts to work its way into the Pacific Northwest. So I think we're going to end up seeing some increasing clouds. You were looking at the forecast last night, and some of the higher resolution models have been backing off a little bit on our shower chances.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. Because initially it did, the graph was giving us a decent chance of some showers. But the 0Z run last night, it was like, maybe not.
Right. And I think that lines up. This looks like a weaker system than our previous system. And we did not get a lot of shower activity from our last system. So I think we'll just say an isolated shower is possible west of the Cascades to wrap up Saturday.
Yeah, probably along the coast, if anything.
Exactly, yeah. And then as that system moves overhead, heading into Sunday, I think we'll have strengthening onshore flow, more of a marine layer Sunday morning, maybe some patchy drizzle. But then that system departs pretty quickly, and you can already see what's forming over the Eastern Pacific Ocean by Sunday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, a lot of warm colors there over the ocean.
Yep, building a ridge of high pressure. That's Sunday late afternoon. Look what happens Monday late afternoon. It starts to amplify over the far northeast Pacific, extending all the way, it looks like, to the coast of British Columbia. Tuesday late afternoon, it expands a bit. It starts to stretch over the Pacific Northwest, but we're still kind of in that northwest flow. We don't have the ridge right overhead, but we do have building high pressure. So I think we'll start to notice warming conditions around midweek. And then beyond that, I mean, I didn't want to show any upper level patterns beyond that, Camilla, because they kind of defer on strength of the ridge, placement of the ridge. Will the ridge axis, the center of the ridge, build right over the top of us?
Right.
Or will it expand just to the east of us? Will it really amplify but focus more over the interior northwest in the Intermountain West? I think for certain we have a warm up coming. I think that California has some pretty extreme heat coming. I think the center of that ridge will bullseye right over maybe Northern California, and potentially even Southern Oregon, which is not great. If some of those fires are still existing, which I imagine they will, the Darlene 3 fire, and then there's a fire burning in Eastern Oregon. Those are the kind of conditions that really allow those fires to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then of course, impacting the wind patterns and all of that is very crucial to the firefight too.
What are your thoughts on that with the building ridge?
Yeah, I mean, well, thankfully, we've continued to see, that westerly flow. I mean, unfortunately for the Darlene 3 fire, that means that downsloping wind coming off the eastern side of the Cascades. But we haven't seen an extreme east wind event yet, which can happen when we get a strong ridge of high pressure. It depends, of course, on the placement of it. But and, that impacts the smoke forecast as well. I've had some people asking, are we going to start to see smoke, on the other side of the Cascades? And for now, we haven't really had a strong easterly wind event yet.
I think those are good points. I think it was last week. I was sitting on the deck with my wife, and it was like, I forget which day it was, but it was in the 70s, probably dropping back into the 60s during the evening. Crisp blue skies, and I was like, "Yeah, it's so nice outside. The air quality is so good." And she kind of giggled. I'm like, seriously, like it's. I think after our big air quality crisis after the mega fires in 2020, I personally I can really appreciate good air quality now,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
And for those folks that are out there in Central Oregon near Prineville, I think every night when the wind calms down, that the smoke kind of drains down valley, and that leads to poor air quality. And as long as fires exist and we have building high pressure, I think that they're potentially going to grow. Hopefully we don't have any lightning coming anytime soon. I don't see any kind of patterns suggesting that.
That's good.
So here's the 850 millibar temperature outlook. For folks that are new to the podcast, this is showing the temperatures in Celsius at about 5,000 feet. Okay. The bottom of the screen is the timeline, and I highlighted the 4th of July. So that's next Thursday, basically through the weekend. And if you follow the green and blue line, the blue line represents the control, or basically the European deterministic model, the single model. And then the green represents the mean, or like the average of the ensembles. It does show kind of a difference between the two. That's why I didn't really want to show the upper pattern and the raw temperature outlook for Thursday through Sunday. But bottom line is both of them are warming up. If I were to just follow, Camilla, the control or the single deterministic model, that's bringing 850 millibar temperatures up into the 20 to 25 degree range. That's hot stuff.
That's really hot. Yeah. Yeah.
I put on the left side of the screen what that typically translates to in the lower elevations from Portland to Salem. And if we were to have a 20 degrees Celsius temperature at 5,000 feet, that would translate to about 90 to 97 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface. And if we're closer to 25 degrees Celsius at 5,000 feet, then we're looking at 97 to 105. And it varies depending on cloud cover, depending on if we have an offshore wind, which dries out the air and sends those temperatures soaring. But conservatively, I mean, I think we could be maybe approaching 90 to 95 if we look at just the ensemble version of the European model. And then if we look at the GFS, things get really spicy when you look at just the raw GFS outlook. This was the 6Z run overnight. And I mean, it's hard to believe that far out, that one single model. But I mean, let's just look at it for fun. Not for fun. I don't want to think about that kind of heat. But yeah, and that would probably, if there was an offshore wind, that would bring us into 105 to 110 degree category, territory. But I mean, look at the look at the ensemble mean down below, keeping it around 15 degrees Celsius. We got to be really careful, I think, with how we approach this upcoming heat event, because we've been nailed before. We think it's going to get really hot, and then models kind of back off. They kind of allow the ridge to amplify farther inland or away from the Pacific Northwest. But bottom line is we have a warming trend coming. The question is, how hot is it going to get? That's to be determined. So I decided to just show the national blend of models, Camilla. And that's still, if this verifies, that would be the hottest weather so far this year. And I think you put an 89 in for 4th of July, which is on the last day of our 7-day forecast right now. I kept it in there. I thought that was quite reasonable. I mean, frankly, we don't know how quickly this will amplify and play out, but our mid 90s possible, certainly, especially with the strength of what the ridge could be. And if we have an offshore wind, that changes the entire ball game. Totally. So, I mean, yeah, I think you could very well see, Camilla, you're working tonight, right? Drew's doing the forecast though. So we'll see what Drew decides to do. I could see him bumping it to 90 or 91 perhaps for 4th of July. And then Friday, most signs point to the ridge like right over the top of us, either Friday or Saturday. So those should be the hottest days. So that'll appear in the 7-day. If you have outdoor plans for the 4th of July, it's going to be hot. It's going to be very warm or hot. And there won't be a rainy event this 4th of July. That's for certain. Okay, let's move on. Tropical update. Hurricane season started June 1st. We did have our first named storm last week that made landfall in Mexico. It was Tropical Storm Alberto. You got to get that pronunciation right. All right. This is a view. This is satellite imagery over the eastern to central Atlantic Ocean. Here's the coast of Africa right here, Camilla. And wanted to point out that, kind of like putting my cursor around this area just to the north of that circle, that's all Saharan dust that is drifting over the Atlantic Ocean. And that tends to suppress tropical development. That's really dry air. Tropical systems don't like that kind of air. But right below that is the MDR, the main development region, I believe is what it's called. And typically we see a lot of activity with waves coming off the coast of Africa later in the hurricane season, but we have one tropical disturbance, it looks like, or a cluster of thunderstorms developing right off the coast of Africa this morning. And then the one that I circled right here it's starting to look more like a tropical system, isn't it? It has more of that cylindrical shape. So that's the area, Camilla, that the Hurricane Center is keeping an eye on. That system over the next couple of days actually has a high 90% chance of forming into tropical depression or a tropical storm. That's what the text in the Hurricane Center is showing as of this morning. Just highlighted, showers and thunderstorms are also showing signs of organization, and a tropical depression or a tropical storm will likely form later today or on Saturday. So, Camilla, when you're in this evening, there could be a new named storm developing in the Atlantic. So the European ensemble outlook, this is the probability of a hurricane forming in the next 0 to 6 days. And my cursor is right over the Lesser Antilles. Here's the Greater Antilles right here. And this is the Caribbean. So that green shaded area is about a 30 to 40% chance of a hurricane forming in this part of the Atlantic over the next 0 to 6 days. And it would be linked to that system developing that we just showed you on satellite imagery. This is a spaghetti plot of the Euro ensembles. And boy, there's some really good agreement, Camilla, that this thing is going to be moving into the Caribbean. I mean, way out in the distance, hard to say if it's going to make maybe a landfall in Central America, in Mexico, or enter the Gulf of Mexico, perhaps.
Yeah.
So this has a lot of meteorologists from the Hurricane Center and NOAA all the way to the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, really keeping an eye on things.
Definitely. Yeah, those spaghetti plots are always so interesting to look at. It does look like, for now anyway, most of them are agreeing it's kind of trending a little bit more south, right? More into Central America, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and could maybe impact the Greater Antilles as well, which includes, Cuba, for instance, Jamaica, et cetera, et cetera. This is the GFS ensemble outlook spaghetti plot, and this is showing similar agreement to the Euro. So kind of there's the Euro spaghetti plot, there's the GFS. So something's coming, I think, and the next named storm is the B storm. Camila, can you take a guess how to pronounce that?
Wait, hold on. I've got a little thing in the way. Beryl? Is that like Cheryl, but with a B?
I actually had to look it up because I've been burned by pronunciations in the past.
Yeah.
So here we go. Beryl.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This would be perhaps Tropical Storm or Hurricane Beryl.
Weirdly enough, that's on our baby name list. So
no.
I've never heard that before. That's crazy.
That was a good one. All right. And of course, Chris is next. Chris is going to be a simple one, but can we just skip to Chris, please? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Alberto, as I mentioned, has already been checked off the list. So yep, it's something to keep an eye on. I know, Camila, one of the reasons I'm keeping an eye on the tropics is I had a friend reach out, or actually I hung out with a couple of friends that are going to be going on a cruise in the Caribbean early July. So something as simple as that could impact your cruise or your vacation plans.
Yeah, very true.
All right. The moment everybody's all been waiting for.
Yes,
the viewer photos.
You always get the best ones in.
Let's check out some of these viewer photos. We have 2 this week.
Okay.
First one was sent in by Diane Wells out in Seaside. The view of Tillamook Head. This was back on June 25th, so this was earlier this week. A beautiful banner cloud. This is a pretty common occurrence out there in Seaside, where the wind is moving onshore. It rides up the slope of Tillamook Head, and it reaches that lifted condensation level and creates that cloud.
Mm-hmm. That's gorgeous.
Beautiful shot there. I love time-lapsing these. I miss our camera out in Seaside.
I know. Yeah, it's true. It was really cool to get to see these forming, and then you can see it dissipating on the other side.
Yep, exactly. Look at this shot.
Whoa, wait, is that kind of like Mammatus-y almost a little bit?
I was thinking the same thing. Those look like Mammatus clouds up there in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. So this was sent in by Lester. Lester is one of my buddies. He was out in Bend this was June 26th. So this was Wednesday evening? Yes. Okay. This was the sunset. Absolute stunner right here.
Yeah, those colors are so insane.
And there were thunderstorms earlier this week. The upper level weather system that brought, the cooler conditions, it did bring some thunderstorms east of the Cascades. I think more so, though, in Washington. But you could just tell that the air was unstable with these kind of clouds forming. So fantastic shot here. And if you do have anything that you want us to see, that you want us to put on, let's say, Good Day Oregon, or one of the evening newscasts, Fox 12 Oregon, or just on the podcast here, all you need to do is go to kptv.com/weather. At the top of the screen, you'll see a Submit Photos tab. And it's really simple. You just submit a photo. We're looking at those photos all the time. We're checking on them. We have a little album that we can log into, and we love to show your photos. Yeah, and that's where we pull our pet photos as well for the dog walk forecast, which is my personal favorite. So also submit your pet photos, please. Camila shows the dog walking forecast every evening. That's right. I don't know which newscast, probably various newscasts. Yeah, multiple. Yeah. So we want to see your dogs as well. Mm-hmm. That about wraps it up, Camila. That's the nice. That's the end here. Mm-hmm. And I think bottom line is the weather's going to be nice the next 5 days. Upper 70s, low 80s, and then mid to late week, we're going to be watching closely for that ridge building in and the potential heat, maybe our first heat wave of the year. So stay tuned for updates. Great seeing you, by the way, Camila. Yeah, nice to see you too. Always a good time, Jeff. Yeah, no doubt. All right, thanks for joining us here on the Fox 12 Weather Podcast. Of course, we'll be back next week with updates on that heat. Until then, have a great weekend. Stop, you're waiting and hesitating, and tell us, please tell